Right now, beef is at an all-time high. It costs $3.36 a pound for ground beef at Walmart in my area. I just bought a half a steer, put it in the freezer for $3.53 a pound. That includes the cost of the animal on the hoof, the processing, and the fuel to go get it. I didn't count my wife's labor going to pick it up, because if I counted that, I couldn't afford anything. I'm gonna show you one really important tip for getting the most for your money when you order a custom steer, and I'm gonna show you how to make a fantastic beef consomme. The way to get the most for your money is to get the most out of the animal that you're willing to use. The meat, the bones, the organs, the fat. If you take all of that into consideration, you can pay as little as $3.53 a pound like I did for a grass-fed and then grain-finished steer that is juicy and delicious. Let me show you what to do with some of the bones. This is what's left over after taking it out of the stock. But these bones came frozen, already cut up into manageable sized pieces from the slaughterhouse. Okay, so I roasted it at a low temperature for several hours. And then I put it in this giant turkey fryer and added water and made a stock out of it. I put a little bit of salt in there to help leach out some of the minerals from the bones and the fat and the meat. So then I brought that to a boil and simmered it for almost 24 hours. And then I took out all of the bones. I put the pot outside so that it would cool and solidify, and I got all of this tallow off the top. Now, this isn't pure. It does have little chunks of meat and stuff in it. I'm gonna remelt this and separate it and get pure white beef tallow out of it. Just get it liquid enough that the solids will settle out of it, and then you can drain them off or suck them out with a turkey baster. What you get when you do all that is this fantastic, rich beef broth. It's still got pieces of meat and fat in it, and so it's, you know, very rich. Now, it'll make an excellent stew or a beef and vegetable soup, anything that calls for beef broth. You can use this. I'm gonna show you how to make consommé. Consommé is this stuff clarified and flavored with vegetables and spices. It's rare, it's rich, it's luxurious, and it's very hard to get. When you can find it in some fancy restaurant, it's very expensive. So it's good to know how to make this stuff yourself so that every now and then, in my case once a year when we slaughter, then it's time to make some beef consommé and really enjoy that. So I'll show you how to make it. I've got these onions. I've got some thyme fresh out of the garden, celery, carrots, tomatoes, and we're gonna use a dozen egg whites whipped into a froth. All right, for spices, I'm gonna use peppercorns, a little allspice, and a little bit of cinnamon. Don't put too much salt because a lot of times you'll reduce that consommé down to make a sauce, so don't really salt it much until you're ready to serve it to eat. No need to peel the carrots. I'm gonna shred this onion, and I'm gonna caramelize this onion with some of this beef fat. The things I do for you. Bad onions. Oh. Oh. Man, that burns. When it hurts, it feels good. A lot of recipes would call for double this amount of tomatoes, but It's already got a lot of carrots in it, and I like the tartness that's added by the tomatoes, but if you put too much, it's just gonna be too sweet. All right, so I'm gonna add all this. All we did was pick this fresh thyme out of the garden and rinse it under cold water. It'd be better to have a cinnamon stick. Same thing with the allspice. I don't think I've got any whole allspice. Would be better. Salt. It's important to add all this stuff to a cold broth. Actually, you can put all this in the pot and then pour the broth into it. This mixture needs meat in it to clarify the broth. I have a lot of meat left in it from making the broth with the bones and all the meat that was on it. If you don't have that, you're gonna need to add some lean ground beef, probably for this quantity in the pot, probably 4-5 pounds. All of that meat is gonna mix up with the egg and the vegetables and the spices, and then when you're done, you're gonna discard it. There's really nothing else. There's no tasty way to eat it. So you're gonna wind up giving it to the chickens. At least you'll get the eggs back, but even if you consider that, this is expensive to make, which is why we only do it about once a year. Let's bring this to a simmer. We'll check back in a few minutes and see how it's doing. This is what you want, a real slow simmer. Eventually that's gonna be solid enough that I can make a hole in it and it'll stay. So I'm gonna let this simmer for about an hour and a half and I'll check it then. Hopefully it'll be clarifying some. This was taking a long time, so I moved some of it to a smaller pot to finish it. Take a look how clear that is. Strain most of the gunk out of there and then pour this into a cheesecloth. If you want to be a purist about this, you'll put this in the fridge and let the little tiny droplets of fat solidify and then skim those off. To save time, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put this back in the pot and bring it to a boil. I have here a piece of sirloin tip steak. You could use round. Traditionally, that's what's used. I'm going to shave off some pieces very thin and omit the gristle and the fat. That's enough for a full serving. Perfect. It was boiling, and this meat is going to be cooked to about medium. You can season it now with salt and pepper. Do not be fooled by this clear broth. If you put this stuff in the fridge, it will solidify like Jell-O. It has that much protein. Eating that is like eating a lump of meat, especially since you have meat in it. This dish is very filling, very nutritious, luxurious, something you really need to have in your repertoire. We don't just want to survive, we want to thrive. We want to know how to live life to the fullest. We need to know how to rebuild civilization after the collapse, if there ever is one. We need to develop these skills so that we can improve our own lives by our own efforts without relying on somebody else, without being dependent on somebody else, so that we can actually help them. Doesn't need much. Yeah, that's good. I wish I could share it with you. All I can do is share the recipe. Make this stuff and enjoy it. Wow. That is really good. Go to the blog, survivalnewsonline.com. I'll have more information about how to make the most of a custom steer that you have slaughtered. Okay? I'll see you there.